What's going on, guys? This is my first stream on my new little computer I bought the other day. It's high quality, isn't it? If I could get like a audio and video check, make sure you guys can see the chart, hear my audio, and then we'll get rolling like usual. If you're hanging out in the YouTube chat, guys, if you could just give me a mic check just to make sure that's running well, make sure the chart's not blurry or anything like that. Whew, all right, I was getting nervous for a second. Like usual, guys, I'll give a minute here for everybody to stroll in, and then I'll go through tonight. I wanted to go through my thoughts on the overall price action, some mega cap charts like SPY, Apple, and the main names for the market, and then maybe a little bit of a Q&A session. I don't know if you guys have any specific setups you're looking at, or broader questions on TA or execution or literally anything. So might be 20-30 minutes here tonight, but give one more minute here and then I'll get into what's on my mind, guys. 1 second. Feel like it's cleaner than my eyesight. Perfect. Hope everyone survived. I guess not survived. It wasn't the toughest day. It was definitely a trend day. But I hope everyone made it out okay today. Definitely the most weakness we've seen intraday now for several weeks. Definitely a tone change. So I wanted to talk about that too. But all right, guys. So, it's definitely an interesting spot for the market here overall. I think really any stock you look at, the chart is looking pretty indecisive. We've got some ugly candles today. Really any larger time frame you look at, we're still looking pretty healthy. It's just, today's candle, I think, is a problem for a lot of people. It's definitely not a super bullish signal for me. But I think, the nature of today was a little bit exaggerated. It was definitely a down day. At the end of the day, SPY's trading at 407. It's barely below highs from lows from 2 days ago. So it was it was definitely a significant sell-off from that 415 spot we opened at, but I don't want to overreact too hard and get too dramatic. I'm definitely sticking to TA and what's playing out in front of us each day in real time, and not getting too caught up in any huge narrative. So I think when you look at what we got today on SPY, especially intraday, if you look at the 15-minute chart, a smaller time frame, or a 5-minute chart, this is kind of what I was talking about in terms of how today was different. I think overall it was a trend day that I would have executed really well on, taken 5+ trades and had an awesome day without the market sentiment that we've had. I mean, it's been extremely bullish lately, and today was, like I said, I don't think it was a difficult day unless you put it in the context of where we're at and what we've seen for the past, really since the year turned. And we had basically these simple bear flag breakdowns all day. It was, retest resistance, sell down. It was retest resistance and sell down. And it wasn't quick selling. It was definitely a slower bleed where they continued to pop it just a little bit, retest, the neckline of that bear flag, and then sell it back down. And so, I think the way I'm going to be approaching each day in terms of intraday price action might have to be a little different. We can't be so, just willy-nilly overall. It has to be pretty calculated and a little more tactical. I think, at least for me, that's my plan. We definitely got into a little bit of a looser mindset, right? Because we've seen so many days now where you were rewarded for over trading and maybe buying something that isn't quite ready, or buying something that, just looks good. You don't have a huge thesis on it, and it was pretty easy trading for a few weeks. And now I think that we're seeing more weakness. We're seeing really this week a lot more chop. And so I think that it just needs to be more tactical overall. And so I'm going to be trying to pick my spots a little bit more. And really, I think the one concept overall that stood out to me intraday was just, again, that complete tone change where buying puts off of resistance was working really well again, and buying calls of support wasn't being rewarded. And so, me and Mans talk all the time about, what is the market telling us, and what is happening. I mean, what's playing out in real time. And today it was buying puts at resistance was extremely effective. I think it was yesterday also, and that's a change. And so maybe, we'll need to adjust our game plan a little bit more, be more tactical, be more calculated. The entries, I think, matter now that, the entry wasn't so important there for a while, really all of this year. But I think it just has to be a little bit more tactical now. And I think if you're looking for downside, you should be, looking to buy it off of those resistance rejections. And so I think if you look at the SPY daily on a broader time frame, this is kind of where I'm at, in terms of if I had to sit here and speculate right now and guess what the most likely move's going to be. Hope this isn't too small. But this is the SPY daily, and if you zoom out, way out, this is the trend line that we've been working with on SPY for quite some time. And with where we're at in the market, I think that this SPY trend line lines up really well with what? It lines up with this volume profile shelf, and it lines up with that 400 psych level. So 400 and 402.50, or really 403. 400 and 403 to me, start to line up with this shelf right down here. And so, if I have to sit here tonight and speculate, guys, on, what the next leg for the market's going to be, I feel like this, to me, makes a lot of sense here. If off of this bearish engulfing bar, and if anybody's not familiar with bearish engulfing or bullish engulfing patterns, or candles, it's where SPY trades above and below the previous day and engulfs the entire candle, and it's a pretty strong signal usually. So we've got this bearish engulfing candle here, and it's not on super high volume, but I think with just the price action intraday we saw today, if I had to guess, I'd really be looking for a SPY pullback down to maybe 403 first, and then 400, and then I just can't quite see the market trading below this shelf here. I think that maybe we could be in store for a retest back down here. It would make sense. Let's see, 20 MA. The 20-day moving average is sitting right around here at 403 as well. So for me, when I look at SPY, we've had this pretty strong rally up from the 380 area up to the almost 420 level. We've got CPI on Tuesday. So I think again, if I'm just sitting here trying to make sense of what would the next move be and what should I be looking for, it would most likely be a quicker maybe gap down or early morning move down here to 403 and then 400. And then if we start to base out around this 400 shelf, and this is all just assuming the momentum continues down that we saw today. If we start to base out around 400, this is a super strong demand zone that I might be looking at potential longs on. And so just thinking out loud here, guys, on kind of my thoughts on what SPY looks like right now. It's obviously, it's in my opinion pretty delusional to get pretty bold up and excited about longing something that looks like this. There's whatever way you want to cut it, today's action was definitely concerning. Today's candles are, it was a weak day, and I think it's concerning. But at the same time, I'm not going to overreact, get super bearish, get super fired up to short the market tomorrow because, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's that big of an alarm. And so I'll look at Apple real quick, guys. This is one that interests me a lot. If you pay attention to the setups that I like to trade and what I'm looking for in longs, I'll zoom way out. Here we go. Sorry, this is definitely a zoomed out view. I hope you can see it a little bit. But if you look at this Apple daily chart, it's super interesting to me because this 150 psych, obviously it's a psych level, but it's also a huge pivot on the chart. And it makes sense because, you see these lows over here, you see these highs over here. 150 has been a huge spot on Apple for, all the way back to really the beginning of this entire bull run. And so to be retesting 150, the market liked Apple's earnings, and it's a different setup than I see on a lot of other charts. A lot of charts bearish engulfed and closed below the lows of this day on Tuesday. If you look at SPY, we closed below the lows of this day right here. You look at QQQ, pretty sure it's the same thing. Yep. Closed below the lows. So this is what we're seeing on a lot of candles today. They breached the lows of Tuesday. And then you look at a name like Apple, who was running really hot off the reaction to its earnings report, and it protected the lows of that day. And if you look at the volume, it's significantly lower than this candle that really engulfed here. And so for me, Apple is interesting. It's a name that the market liked its earnings. It's sitting here right at this 150 psych level. And to me, this is a bull flag pattern. And what does Apple happen to be? The most important stock on the market, the heaviest holding in SPY and QQQ. So, it's definitely a little bit of hopium here. I'm just trying to be fully prepared for both sides. And if you look at the way that this chart is set up, Apple looks like a great two-way setup. Because if we trade down here under this 150 neckline, you can see over here, and you can see really this volume node right here. Apple under 150 being a psych level as well can see down to the base of these two candles probably. Let's put a level there. Let's say 148. Apple 150 to 148 is going to be a quick move. And so, I think if you're somebody who, like me, doesn't have a huge game plan for tomorrow, I do want to keep it super simple. I'll probably be looking at, what we just talked about on SPY, maybe that fade down to 403 and then 400, and then see what the action's looking like. And then I can look towards Apple. I don't know if I'll need another, setup or chart to rely on tomorrow outside of Apple. Anytime for me a chart makes this move up and then retraces back down to test this level here, it's to me looking like it wants to make either a quick move down to 148 and maybe sub, or a nice upside move off of 150 up to maybe this level. So that's, I think, like I said, it's a little bit of hopium. But to me, and this is what I was talking about off of this day. This was, definitely an uglier day for the market right here. And I tweeted, I said, are we going to talk about Apple's daily chart? Because this was a pretty perfect post-earnings day inside bar on low volume. And it ended up ripping the next day. And I'm starting to feel a little bit of that vibe again to where, are we going to talk about Apple's daily chart? Because it's sitting right on top of this 150 psych, 150 demand, pulling back on lower volume, didn't breach Tuesday's lows, and the market liked its earnings. So, Apple to me is an interesting one. It's probably going to be my focus both directions tomorrow. This is just something I like to do personally when the market looks as indecisive as it does right now. I like to keep it super simple, have a two-way game plan for a liquid mega cap name like Apple. And I think that this is the perfect setup for that. We can look sub 150 down to 148, like I said, for a short trade. Or, if we start to see some buyers step in down here around 150, 151, could be a nice long trade. So enough about Apple. I guess that's kind of just my plans overall. And I don't know if anybody's still awake in the YouTube chat, but I think we got like 25 viewers. If you guys have any questions for me, it could be literally anything. It could be about a trade today. It could be about, trading psychology. It could be about a setup you're looking at. But if anybody has any thoughts, oh, we're still awake. There we go. Tesla. 1 second. That was my reaction right away, Rod, was I guess it's a little bit tricky. 216 on Tesla has been my target. I'm not even sure if I've mentioned this very often in the chat, but I've been saying, Tesla 216 to Mans and the guys since like 190. And that's been my target this whole time. It's really probably this. Yeah. I feel like everyone's kind of seeing the same thing here too. This like 215, 216, right around today's Tesla high is, really the former support. It's this larger time frame neckline on Tesla that it's trading up into right now. And so this is a super interesting one. It's I feel like we're all probably thinking about a short trade here. See if I can put together just a quick little, what I would do on Tesla tomorrow. 204. Again, like I said, guys, this is kind of an interesting chart. Anytime candles gap up like this on an increase in volume and print this type of, indecisive looking candle, but you have to think about how Tesla is up 3% today. Like, the volume's red. The candle doesn't look that impressive, but it did gap up, and the result was plus 3%, which is, this was a better day than this day. We had a bigger result today than this candle, and so you have to think about that, how we're up 3% today, only 2.2% here. So I wouldn't let the candle structure or the redness of the candle deter you from playing it. I think that this 204.77 was today's low, so really 205. So I think it's a breach of today's low. I think that Tesla is going to retest 196.75. This all makes pretty clear sense when you look at the confluence over here. I do like the cleanness of the levels that we have on Tesla. We've got that 216 original target that I had, and I think under low of day 205-ish. It wants to slide down through this gap at least. So it's interesting. I know Tesla was one SPY was nosediving today. And you look over and Tesla's still at 212, 213, trading near highs. Something like Unity, there were still names as we were selling off today that were up super nicely on the day and still trading strongly. So that's another thing. Tesla's another thing today that threw me off. There was a ton of call flow. It was trading all the way up to almost 215. It just didn't have the vibes today of a day where I should be trying to short an outsized move down. So it was really easy, yet I feel like there was a few things going on that made me think, okay, Nvidia was strong in the morning, Tesla, it was interesting. And so that candle to me, I don't have a huge bias on or a huge edge. It's definitely an interesting candle. But if you're looking down on it, I wouldn't think any further than today's low, right around that 205 psych, 204.77. It's almost always about either a obvious volume profile shelf for me, or previous daily highs and lows. It's that simple usually. So that's where I would be looking at down. And I think that trading it up carries a lot of risk right now when we talk about the neckline that it's trading up into. So not really a setup that I want to be focused on, because I still, this, at the end of the day, it's a really strong stock that's catching a lot of call flow, that's simply coming into resistance. And so I just feel like there's still more bull catalysts for Tesla right now than a short catalyst. I mean, all you've got is that it's at resist. I need more than the stock's at resistance to really want to short it. There needs to be more layers to me, and I think that's really the only layer here, is that it's at resistance. There's crazy call flow, crazy momentum, and it's super strong. So no strong stance on that, other than not one I would focus on short or long, really. All right. Sorry, I can't take 15 minutes on every question, I guess. We'll never get through them. 1 second, guys. I gotta get a drink of water. Feel free, anybody. We got like 3 more questions here. Wondering how you feel about CVS. What's CVS been up to? Doesn't that make a lot of sense? I don't know how many times I mentioned this in the Discord chat, but CVS right now is such a great volume price analysis example on a larger time frame. Because I know there's a lot of noise, earnings. I don't know. I don't know what the news is or what the earnings is going on with this setup, but I do know one thing, and that's this hammer candle. I mean, if you look at the CVS chart, guys, and this was, when was their earnings? Yesterday. This was a long setup that I had on my list, guys. It was something I was looking to swing. I just think if you're going to be playing these larger time frame setups, you need to be buying, probably 3 months out contracts. Here's how I would play CVS and why I would play it if my chart stops glitching. So if you look at the downtrend on CVS, which is right, like we're just looking from vertical line. If you just look from this line forward on CVS, we had this downtrend here that was super strong. And on a weekly chart, this is more time than it looks like. This is weeks. So, I mean, this is 2 months of CVS trading down. And it traded all the way from 104 to 84. And if you look at this candle here on January 23rd, it's got tremendous volume. It's got a lower wick on it that I love. And that to me is this might be the most simple explanation of all time, but when you see on a weekly time frame a candle that looks like this on CVS, it's got this, very notable lower wick. It's got the highest volume that we've seen in months. That to me is a very surefire reversal candle. And here's the hard part too, is that what did the next candle do? The next week was down over 2%. It was a pretty weak week for the stock. But what was it? It was on lower volume. It never breached the lows of the previous candle. So at the end of the day, it's really just consolidation. And then this pop here, I know it was off earnings, but it makes a lot of sense to me for this stock to be trading like this. And this is still, to me, a super attractive chart. And, you know, I mean that too. There's so much confluence here with CVS. We'll throw it around 85, you know, rough support. But anytime you see a stock trade down into support and print that candle, you should seriously be considering longing it with time, depending on what time frame it is. If you're looking on a daily chart, you know, maybe you don't have to buy as much time. But if you're looking at a weekly chart like CVS, you see a test down into demand, and you see the highest volume that we've seen in months. Buyers have arrived, and it's a bullish setup to me. It just depends on how much time is it going to take and how much patience am I going to need to see this move through, because that's going to pop, in my opinion, 8 times out of 10. Maybe not the greatest explanation, but that's right up my alley. Right, high volume hammer candles off of an earnings report at demand, after, higher volume than a large sell-off. I'm all over that. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So I do like CVS, and I think that we're at resistance. It's this zone right here. So if it breaks this week's high, which was 85, 89, it'll probably move up to 90, 92. So through today's high, or not today's high, but this week's high of 90, there's a $2 zone here. We'll see. All right. What's your thoughts on Netflix? Netflix is interesting because if you look really at the volume patterns as a whole, they're still very healthy. Today's candle was not great. I thought that it was going to give us, I was almost fully convinced that we were going to trade up to the 380 midday. The broader market just did not give that opportunity. The action was strong. The flow was strong. I think any other day, Netflix would have tested much higher, at least a few dollars. It just wasn't there today. It's still a setup I want to look at long. And you've got this huge node here. Probably around 362, right? Yeah. What was today's low? Yeah, through the low on this week, today's low of 361.75. I think that Netflix would try to test 357.50. Or maybe the 358s. I don't know. It's not a chart for me that I can get super excited about, because this volume today is not significant to me. And so it's all definitely always about the pressure of the move and how much volume was behind the move, and that's not significant to me at all. This is. And so this just isn't enough for me to really get bearish about the chart. It's enough for me to keep it in the back of my mind for a long, but I think there's a clear pivot. It's just not quite a huge downside look for me. We'll see. Let's see. FedEx. Ooh, now this is what I'm talking about. It just got a little bit worse. But locally, that's an awesome looking setup. I don't know how much higher it can test right now. Just because this is a theme you're seeing with a lot of charts too. This is kind of like a Tesla type of vibe. It's actually kind of pretty similar to Tesla, where it took that huge spill down to like a demand zone from way back when and recovered back through. This is pretty similar to the Tesla chart, where it sold down off of an earnings catalyst or something similar, some type of news or earnings, sold down to a demand zone, got accumulated, rocketed back up through the same zone that it sold down through, and is now retesting back up to kind of that neckline resistance area. So this is kind of a tough one, but I think that you know, if I look at that, I'm going to assume that it retests the local highs before I assume that it's going to sell. So, I mean, just from one step at a time perspective, I think that FDX wants to retest that spot. That's just what I would have to assume right now based off of what we're seeing. I'm not seeing anything that makes me think this looks like a great short and that's just from a volume perspective. It was down today, but it wasn't on anything. If it's not on anything, I can't draw a real conclusion from it. That the candles that I draw real conclusions from have significant volume, or at least relatively higher volume. If not, the move doesn't mean much to me. And this is, again, just me thinking out loud and the way that I trade and look at charts, guys. If it's not on relatively higher volume or any type of notable volume, kind of no opinion. It's interesting, but that's kind of the way I'm leaning towards on Apple too, guys. It's just not that much volume today to warrant that type of candle. It's at strong demand, and we'll see. Piton. Again, there's a lot of these charts out there right now, and I think they're super interesting because if you notice right away, this looks pretty similar to FDX. It's that high volume move up followed by this. And I've been, every earnings cycle for a couple of years now, I've been studying these patterns. And I think it definitely depends on, I guess, the overall market sentiment. But, I think as just a rule of thumb for me, when a stock makes this type of high volume move up on something as important as earnings, like, what could be more important for a stock than its earnings report, that matters. And when the market reacts this way to an earnings report and then is going to do this on nothing, I still think that this is the candle we're trading off of, because I don't know if anything's truly happened since this. And so I think that this is an interesting one. It's super high risk. If we were to get, especially with the supply and demand setup we have right now, if this is going to fail, that's your landing spot. And if it's going to ramp back up, it probably needs to reclaim, roughly there. I don't know what these low 15. It's just, this one's kind of tough too. Look, when I'm looking for the best long setups from like a supply demand perspective, if I'm looking to go long on something, it's not a chart that's lost support and is now trying to reclaim it. That's usually a tough gig. If you just look at this Piton chart from the most simple of perspectives possible, I do love the overall structure still. But if I'm going to pick 3 charts tomorrow to buy calls on, it's not usually this type of setup where we're losing that key level right here. And we now have the task of reclaiming what's going to be. When I look at this chart, I think one thing after I look at the volume and I look at this structure as a whole, I think of one thing, and that's what's going to be harder to do here for the stock. Is it going to be reclaim that support level that it lost and cut back through this zone, or is it going to be just to fade down to 1338? Like the path of least resistance from this spot right now, it is down. It is probably down to that pivot. I'm still excited about the stock. It's just after today's candles, it's not something that I can be truly looking to be long early. I'd need to see that reclaimed, and then we'll see. But just from the simplest perspective possible, which way is probably going to be easier and maybe more likely. It does seem like down now that it closed below 15.15. So It's an interesting one. I thought it was going to go harder today. It was just, again, I think Netflix, I think Piton, and I think Rivian too. Rivian was weird off of open. I think all three of these stocks would have made great moves had the broader market tone been a little bit different. SPY was pretty much selling off all day long. It was just not a day where stocks were going to make moves really, unless you're Tesla. So yeah, you got it. Charge point. We'll do charge point. That's a mess. That's a mess. See, I don't love, like, my first thought when I pull this up is like how many. I mean, my first, like the first reaction when I pull up this chart, guys, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 upper wicks. So it just seems like this for now in the short term is going to be too difficult of a supply zone for the stock to trade through. It's for me, on if I look at CHPT, it's as simple as take the hint, idiot. when I think about longing this chart, I mean, they've shown me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times that this really 13-ish, 13 plus area on charge point does not want to be bought right now. It wants to be sold. And so they're going to have to tell me that it wants to be bought. I kind of have to take the signal that they're giving here, and that's, so far as of right now, nobody wants to buy this zone. They want to sell it. So that one's interesting. I don't know how liquid those puts are, but strong support around really 1150-ish, this node right here. So that one's interesting. I know I've been rambling for a while, guys. I hope maybe if one single thing was taken away from this, that's a win. Just back to touch on SPY and kind of the way I'm approaching this market. What we've seen the last few days is that we've got ugly candles. There's no other way to paint the picture besides today was very weak. It was a very different tone. There was more selling pressure than we've seen for an entire from open to close. Really, to see it sell down from open to close is not something that we've seen in several weeks. So I definitely need to tell myself to be more cautious, be a little less willing to long, downtrends like today. It's just not. It's all about what the market's telling me, and obviously we struggled a bit today because this was really the first day that we've seen a lot of these things, and I just usually always struggle a bit on these day one price action flips. It was the complete opposite of what we saw, because when this market was rallying and we were trading up, we saw awesome price action on the move up. Bull flag after bull flag breaking, perfect volume patterns. Everything was working exactly like it should have price action wise for a lot of those bull rally days. And then we get to, some of yesterday, and then really today flip that entire, month on its head. And that's what we saw today. Like, it was, if you were a bear and you were very willing to short today, you probably had a very easy time doing so, because it was just, high volume moves down, lower volume chop into a bear flag, and then new leg down. And so if you just flip it on its head, like I said, it was a perfect price action day. It was a perfect trend day. And that's just always going to be a day that I struggle on, because we haven't seen anything like this in weeks. And, when we have strong trends on larger time frames, I really like to ride them until the wheels fall off. And did the wheels fall off? I have absolutely no idea. I think that the charts are very indecisive. Like, that's the one takeaway that I have from charts tonight, as we look at them tonight, is it's just indecisive. I don't really feel super strongly either direction. I don't see a ton of reason to feel super bearish or super bullish. And so that's why I was talking about using Apple as a little bit of a two-way setup tomorrow. This is the one thing that I do when I don't know. And I think that that's something that's okay to admit is that you don't have a hunch, you don't really have a strong conviction either direction, and that's where I'm at right now. I don't know, and so that's where I like to pick a stock like Apple that's going to be a mega cap name with liquid calls and puts, set a few price levels. We've got 148, 150, and play it from there. That's just I'm gonna keep tomorrow as simple as possible, and we'll see what happens. Personally, I came in somewhat bullish today. It was as simple as that. That's exactly what I could have done. Look left. If you look back at today, and I think we were all kind of realizing that as the afternoon progressed, was that this is a very easy trend day down. And I'm not going to have too much FOMO because I think that obviously there's still going to be a lot of down. If this is the start of a new leg down, guys, who cares that I missed today? Obviously, I could have had a great day. And it could have been extremely profitable, and you know, I think it was overall easy price action. I ended up sitting on my hands for most of it, and if today was, you know, really the end of this rally, and we're going to see some decent selling, and you know, this is going to be a new leg down, that's great. I will listen to the candles, and I'd love to join the move down because there is a ton of room. I'm just obviously not going to get a ton of FOMO from not banking today. That's where my head's at. I think that's just where you get as you trade over the years, is that you learn to not there's a difference between missing a trend day and getting destroyed by a trend day because you were adding calls the entire way down. I think there's a big difference between those two. I had a very small red day, and I'm not going to have any FOMO or real regret from my execution today. I think it's, a full reset into tomorrow. And like I said, if this is going to be if the warning shots were fired today and this is going to be our new leg down, I've got all the time in the world to join this move. So we'll see what happens, guys. Let's see if I had one more thing here. But yeah, I think that's all I've got for tonight, guys. I don't have a ton of TA examples because, like I said, when the market gets very indecisive like this, I keep it very simple. I like to trade SPY and usually Apple, and have a two-way game plan for both of those. So definitely going to be a little more trigger shy. I think more selective and more tactical. It can't just be kind of on the fly entries. It has to be super calculated, and you have to have multiple reasons, I think, to take the trade. As long as you're doing that and continuing to be mindful, using risk management, I still think that today was not that big of a deal. I don't feel behind the move to the downside, and I don't feel like these upside setups have completely broken down yet. So that's where my head's at. Total 50-50 spot. I'm ready to play both ways, and I think that if we can all keep it as simple as we possibly can, it's still going to be pretty profitable for all of us. So we will do this ramble each week now, and I'll be on voice in the Discord tomorrow. Probably trading 0 DTE. We'll see. I think Apple puts 0 DTE or Apple calls Lotto might be in the cards for tomorrow. I think I'd prefer calls. We could trade it from this 150 demand, maybe back up to test up here. But like I said, we must listen to whatever the market is telling us. And I'm ready to do that tomorrow. I'm ready to do that into next week. Won't be any swings for me. And we'll try to execute whichever way the market moves tomorrow, guys. So I'll see you guys in the morning in the Discord chat. Mans will be live off of open, and we'll make that money back that we gave the market today. So have a good night, everyone. Thanks for hanging out in the chat, and I'll see you.